Radio Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 924. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Edmonton.
And Chris in Edmonton.
I was wondering if Warren was going to say that. Warren's in Edmonton. We're all in Edmonton for the first time, but we're not.
It's not in the same location.
No, I'm at my parents' place, and that's pretty much where the only place I'm going to be. I'm just here very quickly, and then I'm out again.
How many previous trips, Warren, have been scuppered due to COVID, fire, famine?
Three Christmases,
right? And there was another one.
Two
in
was
there, wasn't
COVID,
there?
and one was, I believe so. But 2 Christmases were scuttled by COVID, one by snow.
There's snow, that's right. Snow. Yeah. So you decided, the hell with it, let's just have Christmas in mid-September.
Yeah, we're not counting on Christmas happening this year, just given the crap record of the last few years.
Yeah, it's been...
It might happen, and we're happy if it does, but will it? We'll see.
Yeah. Listeners, we did try to convince Warren to forego seeing his family at home for the first time in 4 years in order to, watch a King's Demons commentary or something live and in person.
Yes.
But
yes, why would I want to see my elderly parents and my sister, who I haven't seen in quite some time?
Yeah.
When I could watch Doctor Who, I've seen a billion times before.
Yeah, I know. We couldn't convince him.
That's our question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess we'll never know the answer.
It's not, Warren. So that's why Warren's in the south of the city, and Chris and I are in the central bit. Just in case you're wondering right now, so we're all in the same time zone. How interesting!
All right, RFS stalkers. I mean, in my case, good luck. But
yeah, hasn't happened often at all. Actually, now that I think about it, like I remember once you came back for an Edmonton Expo, not for an Edmonton Expo, you were in town. I mean, Edmonton Expo
I was
this
in
weekend.
town at the time. Yeah.
And then the
Expo, which is this weekend.
Yeah, and then there was a Christmas party in 2009. Is that it? Is that the only,
I think so.
Since Chris came back from the UK is when because you moved back in 2008 or something.
I think we've had more remotes, like we did one at Simon's place in England, and Kyle was at my place once, so we were in 2 different rooms.
Yeah, but not actually all 3 of us in Edmonton, the spiritual home of Radio Free Skaro.
Mm-hmm. Very few times.
Yeah, very few. It's very interesting, actually.
Which, as we were just discussing off air, makes things better.
I suppose so.
As I was saying, there's too much Star Wars, too much Marvel, too much of all that stuff. Quit making it ordinary.
Well, they're not making it at all because everyone's on strike. So it's
true. Yes,
works out that way, doesn't it? Anyway, on this episode of the podcast, Tim Burrows from the Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast is dropping by this weekend. We're recording this on Friday night, so it might be out already. It's coming up. It might be Saturday, might be Sunday. I don't know when the episode's coming out, but he talks with two film collectors, John Clancy and John Franklin, as well as Paul Vanessis on that podcast, all about the world of archive film collection in the UK, because, of course, a lot of people who have film collections might also have the odd Doctor Who episode here and there. It's an interesting podcast to listen to, and it's an interesting talk with Tim about it because, Tim is a British person of a certain age, which makes him scarred with skepticism and pessimism. And he is feeling optimistic about a potential return of some missing episodes in the near future. We talk also about this film convention coming up in late October called Film is Fabulous. That is basically used as a drive to get film collectors to gather together and also sort of will away their collections and stuff. We'll talk more about it in the interview, but there's an interesting movement going on in the past few years with film collectors. It used to be a little more retiring and shy and not willing to tell the world of their collections for fear of them being, raided essentially. And now that's also changing, but also, sadly, some of them are also dying and their collections are going into dumpsters. So, interesting things afoot. So do stay tuned for that. after the news, which we'll talk about right now. Miriam Margolyes, I don't know if you heard this. She is the voice of Beep the Meep in Doctor Who. We knew this for the last year, I think, but the BBC...
It's been a while. Yeah.
BBC finally confirmed it. Why? Because Miriam Margolyes' own book came out, and she said it in there.
Well.
So that's why it became public knowledge that, oh yes, by the way, she's doing Beep the Meep, of course, is in the first episode.
Does Beep the Meep actually talk? I think it does in the comic. I don't remember.
Oh,
otherwise.
I could see the speech bubbles in my mind that it's like saying something. So yeah. Miriam
like
Margolyes.
other than Beep.
I don't know, Warren. I never read the comic. Is that out now? By the way, that I don't think it is. The Cyberman one's out, but not the Fourth Doctor one. Which
that one wasn't that closer to the anniversary?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was in November, something like that. Maybe I'll read it then, because or I could just dig up my old copy of DWM, my old copies, because it's spread across several different issues, but. And glorious black and white. Anyway, yep, Miriam Margolyes officially confirmed, but we already knew that for the most part. We just never. Maybe we didn't say. I don't know. Remember. Anyway, it's official now. Also, the BBC shared it. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The fourth Doctor anthology is due out November 2nd.
November 2nd
in the UK, at any rate.
In the UK, digital copy though.
Cyberman one, as you say, is now out and available.
So now. But there's no Beep the Meep in that, I'll tell you. The BBC put out a photo, 15 years apart, with Doctor Who and Donna Noble in the striking a very similar pose in each one. And I realize how much David Tennant actually has aged. Still a fine looking man, but he was a pup back then when he was in Doctor Who. You know what I mean? Very young man.
Yeah, I gotta say, Donna Noble. Catherine Tate, her name escaped me for 1 second. Oh. Doesn't look a whole lot different than she did in 2005.
No, I know. I noticed that too. She's got big clunking boots on in 2023. And I'm just looking at the clothes and stuff, but and the hair is slightly different on both of them actually a little bit. But yeah, fun times. That's in like 2 months' time, kids. 2 months' time, you get to watch some new Doctor Who. How about that? Eh?
Yeah.
Yay. It doesn't seem real until it is.
No, I know.
Like all Doctor Who.
I know what you mean. Doctor Who magazine 595 came out this past week. Has a big cover feature of Bonnie Langford returning as Mel because she's back. You know. That's another fun and crazy thing that I won't believe until I see it. She won't be on screen for like another year, essentially.
Once, it will be quite some time.
Yeah, what Ncuti Gat was on and is starting off his Doctor Who run. But yeah, there she is on the cover and everything like that. And then I have to laugh because Simon Guerrier and Benjamin Morris put together the wonderful sufficient data at the end of each one. It's basically an extension of their Who Graphica book, and they on this version they broke down how many times Mel screamed in the original run of Doctor Who, and for how long cumulatively in each episode that they.
If anybody was going to analyze this, it'd be Simon Guerrier.
It'd be Simon Guerrier, and while he goes one step further in his blog, links in the show notes, RadioFreeSky.com. They actually he puts down like spectral analysis of where her screams appear in each episode and everything with different hurts. And so this is a B, like which pitch she was singing in, like. Only Simon Guerrier can go this deep.
Are you in some way genetically linked to Simon Guerrier?
I thought perhaps, yeah, a little bit. Toby Hadoke and I think are cut from us, and lots of others I think are cut from a very certain
kind of anorak, I believe, is the proper scientific term.
A little bit, yeah. It's a fun breakdown though. So do check it out in the show notes. It's on Simon's personal website, zerotralala.blogspot.com. It's not an O, it's zero. So it's fun stuff. So the big Blu-ray set, the big series 1 to 13, the set that we talked about that's being sold in North America at the BBC shop. Didn't have a release date, didn't have any photos, didn't have anything really. It now does. It's coming out November 14th. That being all of the 13 series featuring the Doctors 9 through 13, and the pictures of the little Funko Pop guys, not the Funko Pop, they're Titan guys, right? I can't say Funko Pop, they're not.
Yeah, Funko Pops have elephantiasis, and these guys don't.
And there's also pictures of the box itself and the individual cases for each Doctor's Who, as well as the a little picture of the certificate of authenticity, because there's only 6,000 of these Doctors. There's even a trailer as well. All these are in the show notes for both the Canadian and American BBC shops. My one concern is I hope that the actual boxes for the discs are smaller than what they appear to be on here, because the reason I'm buying this is mostly to save on shelf space, and I'm seeing some pretty wide boxes for some pretty thin discs. So I'm mildly concerned. Chris, you've also pre-ordered this. Are you concerned about this, or what are your thoughts on this?
The box size?
Yeah, the box size. Yeah.
I'm fairly indifferent on that.
And something else.
It's big. It's very big.
What irrationally annoys me is the Eccleston and Tennant stories are in this. So there's four boxes inside the box.
Right.
9th and 10th, and then 11th, 12th, and 13th separately.
Makes sense.
So the 9th and 10th Doctor stories are in one box, and I don't know, just maybe it's how my mind works. They got Tennant on the left and Eccleston on the right, and it really should be the other way around, because Eccleston came first.
A little bit.
Now that you pointed it out, it drives me crazy too. Now, if you hadn't, I wouldn't have thought about it, but now.
Especially when you look down there, it says Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant. And then but you look at the pictures, it's David Tennant and Christopher Eccleston. So.
Is it really?
Yeah, I got to admit.
I see what you mean.
You know,
I hope someone gets fired for that blunder.
Boy, you know.
I'm officially annoyed at that now.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's even on the spine too. So like the picture on the spine is like that miniature one on. So it's like, here's my Doctor Who set of 10, 9, 11, 12, and 13. Yep.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
I know.
See, I just solved this problem by not being a completionist, and it just water off a duck's back.
I know. You took the smart route, and that's fine for you, Warren. But some others aren't as good as you. So
that's true. Everything you said there is true.
Yeah.
And when I ordered it, I Googled for a discount code and found one for 10% off. So at least I'm not paying full price.
Oh, well done. Well done for you, Chris. That's good work.
58 discs in this bad boy, though.
58?
I don't know. I can't remember if that was there before or not.
Golly.
58 discs.
58.
You're going to lose one of them. You can't not lose one of them.
They're not. You're not carrying them around with you over like sewer grates or anything like that.
There is 58 of them. Somehow one will get missing. Trust me.
True. 58. Wow. I mean, geez, I just hope. I mean, the picture of the box is massive. It's big, and I know that like part of it is to have the action dollies in there, which I'm not allowed to have on display. Erica doesn't like these things; they look freaky, so I got to hide them anyway. So I just hope the actual discs, the boxes with the discs in, are smaller. That's all I want. I need I need more space for Lego on my Doctor Who DVD shelf. So.
You got some real nut problems, you know that?
I know. This is what happens when you don't have kids. You get to just focus on really meaningless stuff like this. And this is what I'll be concerned about for the next 2 months until this thing ships and arrives on our doorstep. So.
And in a period where people are saying that RTD2 is going to be erasing the Jodie Whittaker Doctor, I'm glad to see her front and center on this box.
People say a lot of stupid things, and that's one of them.
No, I know he actually referenced that in his producer showrunners column in the DWM. He sort of like, I was doing a big watch through of the first episode and just sort of like being very flippant and everything, because of course he couldn't tell us what he was watching. But says, "Oh no, that's odd. That people are worried about them erasing Jodie Whittaker," which is funny. So he's aware of like this fear that he's going to be erasing the previous era of Doctor Who. No, he's not going to do that.
But is that a fear? Isn't there going to be a certain segment of fandom like, erase her?
Well, also every showrunner more or less does do this to the previous era. That's the nature of the thing. Like, I mean, even when you got the same showrunner, like when Barry Letts was kind of still running things with Tom Baker, it was clearly a different era. I mean, so
I mean,
just having a new doctor or Chris Chibnall, all his Jodie stuff looked substantially different, and so did Moffat's stuff to RTD. So I think it's just fans being stupid as per usual.
Yeah. I mean,
yes, it is.
Yeah, they were really upset in like 76 when Hinchcliffe unit erasure, that was like all over the billboards in England at the time. Very upset. Twitter was alight back in 1976.
It wasn't constant strikes or,
it wasn't
urban decay. It was the Hinchcliffe era.
How dare Hinchcliffe erase the Brigadier? Brigadier erasure is what they called it back then.
I'm pretty sure anybody who said anything like that at the time was probably pantsed. Yeah. And rightly so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How dare you take our Brigadier away from us? Bring back Benson! Standing outside the
and then some urban tough just comes up and punches him in the face.
Yep.
Shut your gob!
Shut your gob, mate. I'm on strike for being a miner of some sort. Don't know what I'm doing here, but I only know of England in the 1970s from what the value-added material on DVDs tell me, you understand.
Yeah, apparently everybody wore a brown overcoat.
Everyone... And I've seen TV shows, all right? If you're going to tell me that the Sweeney is wrong about England in the 1970s, then...
I don't want to be right, Dan.
I don't want to be right. It's the Sweeney.
So, just for funsies, it's 8,661 minutes. Total runtime for this Blu-ray set.
Okay.
So, divide that by 60 minutes. It's 140, a little over 144 hours. So, 6 roughly solid days. If you can like mainline caffeine or whatever your choice is for 6 solid days, not counting disc change time.
Right. Right.
Those 6 days can be occupied by this.
Oh, wow.
That, kids, is called pulling a Guerrier.
Yeah. Here's a sad thing. Probably around November 14th is when I'm finally going to wrap up my Doctor Who pilgrimage. Just like, here, you just watched it. I just saw these all.
Don't do it.
Don't make me do it.
Just remember who you're talking to, Warren.
Nobody's making you do anything.
No one's making me do anything. I know,
except the demons in your mind.
Mm-hmm. It's a compulsion.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be worse. Even you could be addicted to heroin or something, right?
Right. So. I mean, that's what I tell everyone.
Is it worse? I'm not so sure.
You know what? I've seen more people die of, not personally, but in rock and roll documentaries, I've seen more people die of heroin than
versus Doctor
from the
Who
70s,
fandom?
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many people have died from Doctor Who fandom. That's the new
question. That's
I'm not going into anywhere near this.
That's a tough one. There's a lot of underlying causes and symptoms of Doctor Who fandom that science hasn't quite figured out yet, but they're there. They're there. Anyway. That's coming out. I don't know if you're one of the 6,000 folks, but there's all I know is that there's 5,998 left at these at most, because Chris and I have each ordered one. So I look forward to
all you guys. Everybody who orders one is going to go off and do exactly what you just said from November 14th on, and then it'll be like it'll be like Christmas Invasion. They'll be marching up to buildings for no reason.
What if? I mean, it would be kind of fun. I think they should bring back. I know that physical media is supposedly dying, apart from Doctor Who fans that we were, single-handedly keeping the flame going. I think they should repurpose those multi-CD changers into Blu-ray changers, and then we could just hook that up and just like play it nonstop. Just, next one's over, it switches over, and then I think I just keep it going for 24 hours.
As long as there's a way to change discs out without interrupting playback of the current one.
So you guys are reinventing the annoying thing at the end of streaming that says next episode and it just skips past the credits to the next thing. You basically just reinvented that, except analog.
No.
Except it won't let you skip the credits because you have to watch the credits.
You have to watch credits, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But you also have to watch the weird BBC America thing that's still going to be on there. It's probably not Beep, but with John Oliver voicing it from like 2009, hello there. And you've watching this BBC. And everyone assumes that it's something for anti-piracy, but that's because they only get as far as the anti-piracy bit before they hit the skip button on the promo, but it's actually just about BBC America.
What about the Karen Gillan series 6 BBC America intros?
That's right. Those aren't on the Blu-rays, by the way, for what it's worth. Those weren't on the ones I saw. The one my copies of them. So I
never actually bought the Never actually bought the mess with Blu-rays.
So is that 8?
Until now.
Yeah.
Does that 8,000 minutes or whatever, does that include the VAM?
Yeah.
Or is that another insane rabbit hole?
Yeah.
No, it's VAM. Yeah. It's VAM as well, including the new thing with Doctor Who Recollections with Russell and David. It's basically just 12 minutes of going, do you remember this? No, I don't remember that. What about this? Are you sure that's us? Yeah, it is. No.
And then they'll ask Rusty Davies, fabulous, amazing. He's just incredible. It's just a gift to the industry.
Yeah.
It's not mentioned in the list of contents, so I'm assuming things like Confidential Cut Down probably aren't on here.
Why wouldn't they be on there?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
You should figure out how many episodes of Doctor Who are on this. They don't do this to save this for next week. How many episodes of Doctor Who? 13
different runtimes. Like season 4. RTD kept going to the BBC saying, I need 20 more minutes for this episode. And BBC would say, okay.
Yeah.
And I need a 71-minute, whatever. And okay.
Is the master flinging his head around enough at the end of Time? No, we need 10 more minutes of that.
10 more minutes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to think that, I don't know. It does just say 13 complete seasons and that's it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what to expect.
So, like, I'm assuming they're on the regular Blu-rays and whatnot, but like all the, space and time, like all the little, and Pond Life, and I'm assuming that's all going to be.
That's what ought to be there.
I don't know. It doesn't say.
Somebody has to add up the cumulative number of minutes per Doctor Who episodes. Somebody being you, the listener, you're doing this for us, okay? Do us a solid on this one, all right?
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't encourage them.
Come on. Imagine all the people waiting to listen to the missing episodes chat after this. And get back to us.
How have you gotten this much out of it? That was so little.
I know.
They have already turned it off. I'm sorry. It's
okay. You were right to do so.
Yeah, that's all right. That's what chapter markers are for. I don't want to know. I'm going to figure this out, aren't I? I mean, even just roughly, 45 to 50 minutes. And okay, I'll do this later. I'll do it later, but I will do it.
Please do it later. I will do it later.
I will do it later. Also coming in March of 2024, Chris has found this on Amazon.co.uk. A 13th Doctor graphic novel written by Scott Gray, Jacqueline Rayner, illustrations by Martin Garrity and Russ Leach. Doctor Who The White Dragon coming March 1st, 2024. 13th Doctor comic book adventures. Full stuff
from DWM.
DWM. Yeah. Okay, now it's first second. Okay, so it's all the compilations stuff of the Jodie Whittaker arc. Okay.
Yeah, like the Fourth Doctor compilation thing we were talking about earlier.
That's right.
This for Whittaker's Doctor.
There you go. Well, it's coming to March 2024. So.
Neato.
Yep. So I put this in the news because it's somewhat pertinent now. D23 announced that August 8th to 12th, 2024 will be the next dates for the D23 Fan Expo. D23 is a big thing where it's a whole weekend. Where Disney, it's basically a Disney trade fair, basically, and the fans are the investors, and they come there, and they pay a whole bunch of money to go watch all the panels and stuff, Disney shows and movies, and is it just Disney and Marvel stuff, I guess, too? And
no, Star Wars too, I think, but Star Wars is still a thing of celebration as well. But there's still some, it's basically Comic-Con, but just for Disney.
Yeah, and stuff that's on Disney. The reason we're mentioning here, of course, because I don't know if you heard, Doctor Who is coming to Disney Plus. And so will Doctor Who be a part of this?
I would bet it will be.
Could be. Of course, Warren, it's the exact same weekend of WorldCon 2024 in Glasgow, so we won't.
WorldCon was earlier than that, but
nope.
I could be wrong.
I double checked, and I think, when does that go? Oh, it's the same weekend. That's good.
Well, I'm not going to D23 anyway. What am I, crazy? Come on.
Well, I know, but remember, I wanted to go to Comic-Con, and then all those strikes and things happened, so I didn't. I thought, maybe D23, Doctor. Oh, it's the same day as the WorldCon, and we've already committed to going to that. So, yep. So,
I'm perfectly happy with that.
I probably am too. I'd rather see Glasgow instead of Anaheim. No offense, Orange County. Actually, some offense to Orange County, but so it'll be funny if there actually is like a massive amount of Doctor Who news, and we're over in Glasgow, and it's like, what are we doing in the UK? And all the Doctor Who stuff is breaking in California.
Yeah, you think we're not going to hear about that stuff from Glasgow? What a bunch of nerds! I'm pretty sure we will.
Well, I know that, but it'll be like at 3 a.m. or something like that. Like the time
as opposed to all the times that Doctor Who news broke in the UK and you were in Canada.
Yeah. Or how about this? No Doctor Who news breaks, but they hear tons of stuff about Frozen 3 or whatever. And because I can tell you right now, yeah, Doctor Who is obviously top of mind for all three of us. But it is not top of mind for Bob Iger. It is somewhere near the bottom. So if they do a big roll about Doctor Who, it's because they got nothing else and they're still on strike. That's why.
top of Bob Iger's mind is a second series of Forky Asks a Question.
Exactly. Top of Bob, they stop it as, and then they realize what a terrible mistake that is, and they change it.
Yeah.
Top and apostrophe Bob. That's a whole other series.
That's on what's some more adult Disney stuff.
Yeah, that's a different.
They must own something.
Touchdown Pictures. Exactly. That's what it is. Hey, Doctor Who Redacted is returning for a second series this weekend. It launches like on Monday, I guess, September 18th. You remember the first season? It's actually quite good. I enjoyed it. It's returning with most of the original cast from the first season. I hope it rises to the standards that producer Ella Watts did for the first season. She's not involved in the second season, which is unfortunate. But here's hoping that it returns and it does a good work. So I'm pleased. I'm pleased that something from the Jodie Whittaker era of Doctor Who is still in publication, so to speak. So there's your non-Jodie Whittaker erasure, so to speak, when it comes to that with Doctor Who Redacted.
There's a thing that never happened, not happening.
Yes. The great thing about Doctor Who Redacted, the first series at least, was the episodes were like 18 to 20 minutes. And for someone who has a hard time getting into audio drama, that was the sweet spot right there. It was
also, Doctor Who Redacted is about erasure. So, I mean...
Technically it is by the name itself. Yeah. Not the band Erasure from the 1980s and 90s, but... the raising of people. Anyway, the last thing on the news was before missing episode freaks, you get your interview. Is I don't know if you saw this. The Confession Dial. They've a YouTube channel that's done a few amazing videos over the course of the past few years. They put out another one. It's called The Second Doctor Regenerates, which sometimes like okay. Like little fan stuff like this, but it's really good. It's really good.
Really great. It's like John Smith level compositing. It's really decent.
Yeah. There's it features the second Doctor in his TARDIS and he sits down and regenerates and then turns into
after the war games.
After the post-war games and stuff. So we just have to pretend season 6B doesn't exist. So is that right?
Because it doesn't exist, so there's that.
I know that too. You're talking about erasure, yeah, and it's really good. It's really good. So I encourage you to check it out. 3.5 minutes long. Links.
My favorite bit is when the console goes 1970 and then it turns to 1980, then it goes back to 1970. That was a brilliant touch.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So well done. Links in the show notes, as I said, if you want to have a look at that yourself. All right, you've waited long enough. Here, after the break, is my chat about Doctor Who film collectors with the Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast host, Tim Burrows. The most recent episode of the Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast is a special episode where host Tim Burrows speaks to Doctor Who Missing Episodes expert Paul Vanessis, as well as two film collectors who offer some interesting insights into what the collective mindset of collectors is and whether they might be holding on to missing Doctor Who and other media within their collections. It's a very interesting listen. I'm happy to have Tim on now to talk about it. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I'm great. It was a fascinating podcast to listen to. I heard the Patreon version come out in between this and our chat now, and by the time this comes out, I think the episode will be out to all your regular listeners throughout the world. But how did this specific idea of a podcast, because you usually cover missing episodes per episode. I've been on a couple. Right. It's great. This is one actually talking to film collectors. How did the idea and how did this sort of thing come together?
Well, as you'll know, because you've suffered through a couple of them, we like to do an analysis of the episodes, and then we like to talk about either how they came back or what the potential prospects are for copies of these episodes to be out there, and therefore whether there's any possibility that they'll be found in the future. And a recurring theme is and will be private collectors, private film collectors. And as a Doctor Who fan who came back to Doctor Who in about 2010, around that time, there was lots of missing episode talk in the ether. And in 2011, a collector called Terry Burnett returned 2 episodes, Galaxy 4 Episode 3 and The Underwater Menace Episode 2. And over the years before that, the odd episode had come back by a private film collector. And then in 2013, there was the Philip Morris returns and all the rumours around that. And moving on from them, it seemed to me, and it's fact, that there's 3 ways that episodes can come back now. There's a very small, minor way, if you like, which is misfiling of cans in an archive, such as the BFI.
Right.
So park that. And then the other 2 viable options are for them to be returned or found in a TV station overseas. Well, that's all gone very quiet. But the other way, the other viable way for episodes to come back is via private collectors. And my experience in Doctor Who fandom is that there has been talk of films with private collectors. Indeed, Paul Venezes came on your podcast, 5 years ago, something like that.
It's been a while now, yep.
Yeah, and revealed that he knew of 2 episodes in the hands of a private collector. And when this has been chewed over, well, first of all, I think it went in the Daily Mirror or somewhere and got mangled to TV producer knows all Doctor Who episodes exist privately or something.
As they are wont to do, yeah.
But Paul revealed there were 2 episodes in the hands of a private collector, but that, to quote, he's got bigger fish to fry at the moment. And so there's always been this discussion about private film collectors. There's been very little detail or attempt or opportunity to understand what a private film collector is. I think there's a perception when you read comments online or on the forums that there are these slightly malevolent, self-interested collectors who are hoarding items to the detriment of Doctor Who fans. And so since I've started the podcast, I've always thought, wouldn't it be great to get some collectors in a discussion? Why on earth they'd want to talk to a Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast, I couldn't quite make that connection. But it just so happened I'd been messaging Paul about recording a podcast about I, Claudius, because Paul worked on the absolutely fantastic DVD release a number of years ago, and there's a missing scene in I, Claudius, a notorious missing scene. So I thought that was a good angle to get Paul to come and have a conversation about the making of the DVD box set and all the brilliant interviews that they did and so on. And Paul's agreed to that, but we are still yet to record. But while we were discussing this, I said, by the way, you don't happen to know if there's any film collectors who'd be willing to have a chat with me, do you? And the reason I gave was I'd quite like to understand film collecting, because it feels to me that they're slightly maligned in online discussion around Doctor Who missing episodes and about all sorts of missing episodes, missing TV shows. So Paul went away, and within about 48 hours or so, he'd found me 2 collectors who were willing to talk. So I emailed them. I said what I'm trying to achieve, what I'd like to know, outlined the areas of conversation, and within a couple of weeks we were recording. And well, the results are all there to hear. And I'm sure we'll get onto it, but by a quirk of timing, they'd all been working on, but the two Johns. So on the conversation were 2 collectors, a man called John Clancy and a man called John Franklin, and they're both well-established, well-connected film collectors of decades. And I invited Paul on as well, so that he could form that bridge, so he could give context on the Doctor Who side of things if that was necessary, but also bridge the other way, you know. So Paul joined us, and But yeah, the two Johns, John Clancy and John Franklin, happened to have been working on an event in October, which is about the preservation of film.
A film festival that we'll get to in a little bit. Naturally, whenever Paul Vanessa says something, my initial instinct is to deep dive and analyze every frame like it's the Zapruder film, and so I want to think like, why did Paul choose these two specific film collectors, John Clancy and John Franklin? Do these two film collectors have Doctor Who in their collections? Do they know something? Why these two random ones? Were you ever under the impression that you were going to be talking to two film collectors that had some missing Doctor Who in their collections?
Absolutely not. I think I haven't actually asked this question, but my reading of it very much is that Paul happens to be dealing with these two collectors at the moment because of an initiative that is being carried on to preserve film, and because they're all involved in some capacity in this event. I would be absolutely shocked if either of these two turned around and said, we've got missing Doctor Who. Indeed, as the interview shows, John Clancy specializes in 8mm Super 8 film and is really, really passionate about cinema. And John Franklin collects 16mm film, and his field of interest is not TV on film, it's film noir. He's got over 1,000 films. So no, I don't think no, they don't have Doctor Who missing episodes. But where they are positioned at the moment is they are talking to a lot of film collectors, and so we're in a position to come and talk to me about the state of collecting, how many collectors are around, the prevalence of feature films versus TV on film. So to clarify, what is covered in the interview is that film collectors are interested in film, movies, the cinematic experience. And in the vast majority of cases, TV on film, i.e. film recordings which have been salvaged over the years from ITV or the BBC, are more curios than anything else. Terry Burnett, who had the two Doctor Who's and he returned them in 2011, sadly died recently. But he wasn't interested in TV on film per se. He was interested in his own speciality. He just happened to have picked up these items over the years. So the impression is very much given that the vast majority of film collectors aren't interested in TV on film.
Yeah, they're, to use an analogy, they're more interested in playing with the action figures than keeping them in their original cases up on a wall. Is the impression that I got. Yeah, they love to project films. One of the guests, John Franklin, he said before COVID, he'd have film nights. They'd get the popcorn out. Yeah, they're very much into both the enjoyment of the films themselves, but also the enjoyment of maintaining a projector, projecting a film. And during the interview, John Clancy, who's a real nerd, and I say that as a very respectful term, as a wannabe nerd myself, he keeps going off, and you can tell that he's just ready to talk for as long as he is permitted to about the intricacies and the technicalities of projecting a Super 8 film onto a screen. And it was really nice to hear someone being it's always nice to hear people being passionate about their interests anyway, and particularly nice to hear this passion existing in something that is adjacent to my interest. But during the interview, Paul made the point that it's very counterintuitive for someone who's very passionate about film, movies, as most film collectors are, to be interested in watching a crappy 4x3 black and white TV show projected instead of that. They want to be watching Jaws, or
some of the terrific cinematic experiences that have been over the years.
Yeah.
Galaxy 4.
And a complete one, too. Not just like, let's pop in episode 3 of a random Doctor Who story that I've never seen before. And people like us, you and I, would, of course, relish that opportunity.
Yeah, indeed. Well, they tell the story on the episode, don't they, of a collector, again, who's sadly died a few years ago. But he sold 3 Doctor Who episodes to somebody in the 1980s. And the guy who bought them sent them back because he wanted to sit down and watch a complete Doctor Who story. One of the episodes was in Spanish anyway. And he sent them back really disappointed. And then thankfully, a man called David Stead bought them. And one of the episodes was missing. Mm-hmm. And it was the Wheel in Space episode 3.
Purely because someone wanted a complete story to watch is why we
bought it, sent it back. So David Stead picked it up and got something else in Spanish and something else that exists.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you are the Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast, and you have Paul Vanessas on, and you have 2 film collectors. It was it difficult not to dance around just asking them point blank, do you have or know of anyone who has any missing Doctor Who episodes?
I was really worried that the guests, not so much Paul, but that the 2 Johns would feel obliged to try and contextualize everything in terms of Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Because I think naturally you'd go into such an interview thinking that people who are into Doctor Who are only into Doctor Who. And, I've seen the odd film in my time, so I'm quite capable of processing a conversation that isn't about Doctor Who. So I'm quite pleased that I didn't do that because we're an intelligent bunch, Doctor Who fans, and we can understand what's being said, and we can understand the possibilities of what's being said without it all being put in terms of black and white Doctor Who. I think the conversation applied to all vintage TV, and indeed all missing vintage TV, in that they laid out the circumstances quite colourfully of how these films made it from the copyright holder, ITV, BBC, whoever, to collections. And then, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, to the skip when the collector passed. But, if they're going to talk about the opportunity for films to make their way out of Villiers House at Ealing into a collection, well, you don't have to labour the point about Doctor Who. It could be anything. And they did say, that a lot of this happened. And, I think one of the collectors, John Franklin, said he was surprised to hear that film collectors are saying, well, we've got quite a lot of TV in our collections. But they're not really interested in it. They may not even understand or know what it is. They just know they've got it, but they're not interested in projecting that. They want to project Jaws.
Yeah, they're not hoarding things just to brag to other people who they don't really care about that they're hoarding something is the impression.
No, they're hoarding because they're hoarders.
Yeah, or that too. Just like I just have everything and you can't see it. I might need this later or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think the point was made that these are collectors and collectors are very often instinctively hoarders, and they talked about a number of collectors who, still alive or when they have passed, they go into their houses and they've got 3,000 cans of film, 10,000 cans of film. This isn't a perfectly rational and sane occupation, but I collect things and I'm not rational and sane. There are people who collect Doctor Who memorabilia who can't possibly invest enough time to extract enjoyment out of every single item in their collection. People collect because they like collecting, and they like the nostalgia and what that gives them. So yeah, I think the interview well and truly kiboshes the notion that there are film collectors out there who are knowingly withholding items, against the best wishes, the best interests of Doctor Who fans. I did ask the question, and, they said, well, the instinctive answer was, that's absolute rubbish. If people have things which are missing, It's because they don't understand what it is that they have, and it has no power for them. And as soon as they realize what it is that they have, they tend to hand them over, and that's happening all the time. You mustn't look at this through just a Doctor Who lens. One of the really interesting aspects that I hadn't really thought about and had always dismissed was the importance of home movies. So they laid out what film collectors collect. The main interest is features. There's a very small percentage who have an interest in TV on film. And indeed, collectors do have TV on film, but it's a curio that they've picked up. And because they like collecting, it just, goes in the shed. And then the third thing that's interesting and of the most cultural value, arguably, and archives and museums are interested in this stuff, is home cinema, home movies, shot in the local park, which may no longer exist, or, showing how things were 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and so on.
Yeah.
That was a real eye-opener for me. And indeed, as a Doctor Who fan, I've spent more time than I should poring over Super 8 footage shot on Christmas Day in 1960.
5 or something.
5 or 6.
Looking for a screen grab of the Feast of Stephen in the background somewhere.
But I didn't raise that during the interview. I thought that might be a bridge too far.
Right.
Yeah.
We've alluded to it a couple times here, but John Franklin is sort of the curator of this upcoming event called Film is Fabulous, happening October 29th at the Phoenix Cinema and Arts Center in Leicester. Or if you're in Canada or the US, you can call it Leicester and be wrong. This is the thing that's near and dear to John Franklin's heart, but he mentioned this in the podcast and to you as well.
Yes, indeed. So what John Franklin has found, and indeed John Clancy, and indeed Paul Vanez, is they're increasingly getting the phone call, or the word gets around the collectors network that a collector has passed away, and they have heard or seen far too often these huge collections that need to be cleared from a property because it's being dealt with in the execution of the will or whatever, in the dispersal of the estate, going to landfill. And John actually said on the podcast it's happening on a daily basis.
Oof.
That these collections are going to landfill. And so I get the impression that this has been eating away at John for a while because he loves film. He absolutely adores film. And so he's got in touch with his colleagues in some of these amateur organizations, such as the British Film Collectors Convention, and said, well, let's do something about this. And they've talked to various archives. The one that John is particularly dealing with is MACE, which is the Media Archive for Central England, which is chaired, I believe, by Sue Molden.
Who, of course, was working for the BBC back in 1978. Those of you who don't know much about the Missing Episodes saga, it all starts back with her, basically.
Indeed. So what John has done is link archives who can receive film with universities who teach film, who can help process the film and understand collections as they come in, and the collectors. So his main driver for this event is to encourage collectors to make provision for their film collections in the future after they've died, which is sad, but it's a very practical way of approaching the problem to prevent these film collectors who haven't made specific plans for their collections to be understood, sorted, and dealt with in a way that is in the best interest of the films themselves, and therefore opens the door in the future for others to enjoy these films, which have been lovingly looked after for decades. And so what they're doing is to spread this message. They're putting on what sounds to me like an absolutely fantastic event at the venue in Leicester, which will have film dealers there. Collectors will be able to come along and do like a bring and buy thing where they can exchange items.
Right.
But they're also have the archives there so people can talk to them. And then they're running a number of panels about archiving, about TV on film, which we'll talk about, missing television, and about film on film. And they're hoping to get industry experts there, well-known names, and so on. And then they conclude the event by screening a film called Splice Here, which is an Australian film about the plight of celluloid in the digital age, and I believe talks about the wholesale destruction of celluloid in favour of digitalisation, and efforts and the fashion among certain directors to start, using film again in cinema. And so, now they are going to announce a number of missing items which have been discovered in their conversations with film collectors. And the example that was given on the interview was a film made in 1919 by Selznick.
Wow.
That's 104 years old, which doesn't exist. And I believe it's going to the Library of Congress. It's an important find.
Goodness.
But also, there will be, I think they found various trims, some mute footage of TV shows, etc. And there will be missing TV shows announced. And earlier today, I text John Franklin and said, what can I say then about announcements? And he said, and I quote, "To clarify, I can 100% say 20 items that are missing from the archives, including the BBC, will be announced at Film is Fabulous." So I don't know what that means. I think there'll be a mixture of features. I think there'll be a mixture of trims and interesting edits that have been found, but also, hopefully, some missing television.
How interesting. How interesting indeed. I mean, it is, as you say, it's difficult to think of that there's a world outside of Doctor Who when it comes to missing media and everything like that. But when he mentioned a film from 104 years ago being found, that is still quite extraordinary for something to have been sitting around for so long.
Well, they did talk during the interview at length about secrecy over the years, and they talked about I asked about Bob Monkhouse. Famously, there was an attempted prosecution of him in 1979 for owning film on TV shows on 16mm, and the attempted prosecution failed, but part of his collection was destroyed. And they also talked about in later years, that film studios who had lost all of their original copies were then approaching collectors to see if they had things on 35mm, which had at one point been in a cinema and been salvaged from a cinema, so that they could release their own high definition restorations. And so it's been a real eye opener for me on there's more to life than missing television. Right. The preservation of film itself is really important for all of us who don't just watch Doctor Who. We enjoy all sorts of film and TV releases. So yeah, 104-year-old film, which will certainly be of academic interest for sure. I can't see DVDs flying off the shelf, but it's certainly of interest to collectors, and something so old and precious, 104 years old. The cast members died in old age over 50 years ago. Right. It's crazy how old it is.
I think it was mentioned in the podcast, but also just in general. It's just, when big movie studios and TV networks come to film collectors and say, "Do you have this?" Do you think the initial reaction from film collectors is they're coming for my stuff, they're going to take it from me and maybe charge something for me? Wasn't it interesting that I didn't invite the comment at all, but I asked John Clancy right at the start. I said, "Do you just collect Super 8? He went, "Well, I've got a few things on 16mm and 35mm, but until recently we don't talk about it because there'd be a knock on the door." Right. But they do describe a thawing of
attitudes towards privacy. And John Franklin spoke quite eloquently about, well, film collectors talk to each other about what they have, but there are a number of reasons over the years why they've been reluctant to do it. One, because in a perfectly legitimate way, film was salvaged from copyright holders, the BBC, ITV, and they just don't want to be answering those questions. Why would you? If you happen to have helped yourself to a can of film that was destined for destruction 60 years ago, 50 years ago, you're going to be in your 70s or 80s now. Why would you want to be answering those questions? And, what happened to Monkhouse, and films got destroyed, and then attempted prosecutions of other collectors because they feared that piracy was going on and people were monetizing it, and they weren't. And then lending their films to studios for restorations and never getting them back. So you start to understand this feeling that is in the air with film collectors that, well, everyone who's supposed to be looking after this stuff isn't doing a good job of it. We'll just keep it to ourselves, thank you very much, because we'll do a better job. You sort of get that feeling. But they did describe now a thawing of these attitudes. And you've got great work going on by the Johns and by Paul, talking to collectors and trying to encourage them not to necessarily hand over their stuff to copyright holders, but to maintain their stuff. And perhaps, oh, by the way, have you got anything of interest? And I mean, to me, this is the methodical, planned approach that fans of vintage TV have been crying out for. I think this is a brilliant way of addressing that. And it's tragic that film collections are going to landfill every week, every couple of days. It's tragic. But that would be happening anyway. We can't worry about what we don't know about. But at least now there is a team of people who are trying to approach this in a systematic way and rescue as much. And it just so happens that as part of this process, various missing media are coming to light. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think I could be wrong. I'm just remembering off the top of my head. I think Terry Burnett's collection has certainly been handed off to Richard Latto, and I can't remember who the other person who is.
Stephen Cranford was
Stephen Cranford
about it,
combing through it. I think they might have found at least one missing bit in there. I think in his collection. I think
there was an episode of a show called Hugh and I.
There we are, Hugh and I. That's the one.
So that's Hugh, who was in Delta and the Band.
Yeah, Hugh Lloyd. Yeah,
and Terry Scott. There's an episode which I think that Terry Burnett had already allowed the BBC to have a copy of.
Oh, okay.
But I speculate he may not have given them he didn't give them the copy, so I speculate that is now going back to the BBC, which is fantastic news, because they're the people who can properly store this stuff in the right conditions. So and there is an exercise, I believe, going on where Terry Burnett's collection is being assessed. But in the interview, they talked about Terry Burnett because it's a name that they all know and we all know. Terry Burnett is one of those collectors who made plans and provision for their collection after he sadly passed away.
Hopefully this event on October 29th, which you'll be attending, can direct more and more film collectors to do the same with their precious
yes,
film
indeed.
collections.
I'm very lucky that I'm going to see what happens because I'm very interested in the whole thing. I don't own any films, by the way, but
right.
I'm going to get some. I'm just going to get one, maybe two, and no more.
Right.
Just to see what happens. But I'm going to be there, so I'll be able to report on what happens. I do want to just reiterate, though, this isn't a Doctor Who event. This isn't a TV event. There is a section on TV, and it's really important that as many film collectors can go as possible so that they can get that message and hopefully discuss their collections with like-minded collectors and, make provision for them after they pass away. So yes, I'll be there. I'll be reporting on what happens. there will be live streams of the panels as well.
Oh.
So there will be a live stream of the panel which Paul Venezes is appearing on, which is about TV on film.
That is good to know. I will be probably waking up at by that point if it's on a what is it, Saturday? Yeah, Saturday, October 29th, in my part of the world to watch that.
Sure. Well, maybe you could share the links via your socials. I will certainly be doing that as well.
Definitely.
And people can just tune in from the comfort of their living room. And find out what's being said, and hopefully find out what's been found and what's being announced.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like an exciting time, Tim. I don't know how are you feeling then after arranging this podcast interview on the Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast with the film collectors and going back and forth with them. What is your level of optimism, even though they haven't really said anything directly about Doctor Who or anything? Like where are you at now when it comes to missing episodes of Doctor Who being returned in the near future?
Take this at face value. I'm generally optimistic. I think what we have is a team of people who are opening the doors, albeit putting a foot in the door and maybe not swinging the doors all the way open, to collections that are out there, and putting circumstances in place that allow for the conversations to happen. That mean that if there is any Doctor Who out there and it's in the sort of dragnet of all their connections, that they are alert to it, that they know that there are passionate people who would really enjoy so much some missing Doctor Who, or indeed other missing TV shows, to be found and to come back. So I'm genuinely optimistic. Mm-hmm. I've not heard anything specific. I've not been told anything specific. But I do ask Paul on the podcast, saying, is there going, because I have to, because I get stoned, right? If I didn't say, are you going to announce any missing Doctor Who? If I don't ask it, someone else will. And Paul said, in a very Paul way, I've not seen any Doctor Who that is likely to be announced at this event. But then one of the Johns shouted, but there's still time, because they're having conversations with collectors who may have missing television, that may include Doctor Who, that may come forward before this event, and indeed the publicity garnered by this event by announcing finds will hopefully work its way through the film collecting community, and people might want to share that success and that enjoyment of being hailed as a hero for looking after these materials for decades.
Mm-hmm. Interesting times leading up to October 29th and what we'll hear that, but for now you can definitely listen to the episode with film collectors on the Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast you're probably already listening to anyway, and if not, you should be, because it's splendid, and I'm glad it's back after a slight hiatus there, and I'm not just saying that because I've been on a recent episode as well. But
yes, it's back. We have, as we record, we're recording our 10th Planet episode tomorrow night. Which will be the end of the first half, as it were, the end of an era, celebrating William Hartnell's tenure in the show. And we've got booked The Power of the Daleks to come. I've already had a bit of that recorded, which is a really great guy called Rob Mamoni in Australia, who actually recovered about, I don't know, 2/3 of the clips of Power of the Daleks that we have.
Goodness.
And there's a really interesting discussion to be had about where Power of the Daleks was sold, where the copies went to, and whether we'll get to see any more of it.
I look forward to that, as I look forward to every episode from it.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet. Tim, thanks very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Speak to you soon.
So yes, stay tuned, everyone.
Keep watching the skis.
Keep watching.
Incredible. The Space Pirates is coming back. I haven't listened to it. I have no idea.
I know you didn't listen to it. No, but I was pleased to hear as I'm sure you were as well, that the convention, the Film is Fabulous convention, will have their panels streamed, including the one that Paul Vanessa is on. So, when the time comes in October 29th, we'll be...
You'll be up at 3 a.m. complaining about...
I might be to watch
Reverse D23.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they have to say and what news comes out at that event, and what news might come out in between now and then. But do listen to the full interview episode as well on Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast. Links in the show notes as well. All the links in your show notes at radiofreescaro.com. All right, next week, kids. I can't believe we're doing it. It's been years in the making, but this week... coming up here is the 50th anniversary of a little Canadian science fiction show called The Star Lost. And we are going to, against our better judgment, cover this thing with Warren, myself, who grew up obsessing with it is a strong word.
I've become more of a later years obsessive about Star Lost.
Yeah, I was always there in the background humming along. Our friend Annette Weerstra, and then Jason Davis, who was like Harlan Ellison's friend and editor and biographer, and Harlan Ellison created the Star Lost way back in 1973. We'll tell you all about it. Why it was a spectacular failure. We've been fascinated by this show for years. Watch our social networks in the week to come. We'll have short little videos all throughout, just to give you a little bit of information about the show before we talk about it. It's fun. We'll have fun. Trust me on this. And you may even want to watch that show yourself just to appreciate the horror that is Canadian television in the 1970s and how they ruined several people's dreams. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's next week on Radio Free Star Lost. Maybe. Yeah. Until next time, I'm Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Edmonton.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreescaro.com. Follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro. Subscribe to us on iTunes and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.